All right, welcome to Chapter 15. This is the final chapter in this unit. So next week we'll have a study session before our exam that'll open up on Canvas. That study session will be through Zoom, and you can check the announcement for information about that. Chapter 15 is all about renewable energy. Here are the objectives for renewable energy. You'll also have a course assignment that'll be due next week as well, and that takes you through some of the non-renewable and renewable energy sources. Okay, so human energy consumption through the ages has changed, but it's increased over 300-fold since the first humans. Human population growth has been shaped by the kinds and amounts of energy used, and the average food energy use is about 17 megajoules or 4,000 calories per day. This is a look at human population and energy use, showing how human populations have increased through 3 different periods. Changes in both the amount and uses of energy over that time span are depicted in the bar graph correlated to the beginning and ending points of each period. This is what a typical evening in New York Times Square looks like. Maybe some of you have been here. I have never been. Over 40% of primary energy consumed in the US is used to generate electricity. You can see that here with all the billboards lit up. So what is renewable energy? Renewable energy are primary energy sources that are continuously replenished. So unlike non-renewable energy sources that will be depleted, renewable energy sources are continuously replenished. So we'll go through these: falling water, wind, sunlight, Earth's heat, ocean tides and waves, and then biomass. And we'll look at the disadvantages and advantages of each. Energy abundance. Compared to total human energy use, renewable energy sources such as wind and sunlight are extremely abundant. However, these resources are not concentrated in forms that are easy to access. And note that the relative size of these circles is not exactly to scale, but you can just see here how much solar and wind energy we could have, but it's hard to harness both of them in concentrated uses. This is a look at hydroelectric power and how it provides the greatest proportion of modern renewable energy consumed in the world. So out of all of the renewable energy sources, hydroelectric power, which is using dams, so water pressure built up behind dams, that pressure can turn a turbine and produce electricity. Hydroelectric power is probably one of the oldest sources of renewable energy as well. We've been using that for a long time. There's 4 general categories of challenges, and these 4 categories are listed in the first part of your notes under number 1. New technologies is a challenge because many technologies designed to use renewable energy sources are still in the early stages of development. Economies of scale. The scale of production for many renewable energy technologies remains small, which keeps their production costs high. Externalized costs still favor non-renewable energy. What that means is the price that we pay, for example, for a gallon of gas or a kilowatt per hour of electricity does not capture all the costs associated with its production and use. So even though non-renewable energy sources could still be cheaper, we don't really look at the costs involved with polluting the environment and things like that. And then the final challenge is limited consumer understanding of the benefits of renewable energy. Consumers have little influence over the choices made by the power company from which they get their electricity. So there's only so much we can do on our end. We kind of just have to use whatever we're given. Since 1995, demand for solar photovoltaic, which are the panels that you put on your house for solar panels, has increased. And so has solar panel production, indicating here as PV capacity. As a consequence, the price of panels has come down by almost 80%, which is awesome. The bump in price between 2005 and 2008 that you see was due to a little shortage of silicon needed for the PV cell manufacture. So we'll look at solar energy first. Passive solar energy uses energy of sunlight without relying on electrical or mechanical devices such as pumps or fans. So this would just be natural lighting and heating. And active solar energy uses mechanical devices to heat water and buildings or electrical devices to generate electricity. So this would be your rooftop solar panels and the concentrating solar power system. This is passive and active solar. In the picture in letter A is showing a home that it is incorporating elements of both passive and active solar technology. The passive solar design features can significantly diminish the energy required to heat a home in the winter and cool it in the summer. Solar panels will capture solar energy stored in batteries to provide electric power around the clock. And each panel is composed of modules containing these many photovoltaic cells. In letter B, this is showing light energy is captured to produce an electrical current in the silicon wafers of a PV cell, and homeowners are able to put surplus electricity back onto the grid and then are compensated by utilities for doing so. This is a look at concentrating solar power systems, which focus sunlight onto water pipes producing steam that is used to turn generator turbines. Rows of these trough-like solar collectors is in the Moroccan desert, and they gather sunlight that heat synthetic oil to produce steam for electrical power. In the high Andes of Peru, so in the Andes Mountains of Peru, a family is able to power lights and small appliances with a little solar panel that you can see located there right outside their home. So advantages and disadvantages. In this part of your notes, you can write down as many or as few as you want. So I just leave several blanks for you there. Feel free to pause the PowerPoint because I'll go through this quickly if you need to write them down. Advantages of solar energy: it's widely available, there's few environmental costs. Disadvantages, however, as you know, it's intermittent. In Southern California, here we have a lot of it. In other parts of the world, not so much. It's based on where you're located, so it's regional. The distribution of it, you can't really distribute solar power. It's just there or it's not. And there are some high upfront costs of the solar panel systems themselves. Here's the solar resources and where the greatest amount of solar resources are in the United States. It's showing how the southwestern U.S. is an ideal region for solar power use. Other parts of the country, not as much. And that's why you'll see the most solar panels usually on homes here versus in the Midwest or on the East Coast. Biomass energy. Biomass energy, also called bioenergy, is energy contained in firewood and other plant matter. It's derived from solar energy as plants and trees go through photosynthesis, and it can be burned to produce energy, whether that's wood, charcoal, crop residue, ethanol, or biodiesel. This is pelletized wood, and it can be used as fuel in stoves and coal-fired power plants as a possible replacement for coal. This is a look at pure ethanol. At this Brazilian service station, ethanol, also the green alcohol that you see, is much cheaper than gasoline. In Brazil, ethanol is produced from sugarcane and it's burned directly in many cars. Here's some advantages and disadvantages of biomass. Advantages: it's very carbon neutral, so it doesn't emit a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It emits other harmful substances less frequently than fossil fuels, and it's evenly distributed. Disadvantages: it could impact the food supply if we're spending a lot of our land use to create plants and trees for biomass energy instead of food. It's inefficient choice of fuel crops, and we would be clearing the land to plant these crops, so that could harm the environment. Here's a look at the production of ethanol from corn, which uses considerable amounts of non-renewable energy, such as gasoline, to run this machinery or tractor, and also the fossil fuels used to manufacture fertilizer. So again, kind of outweighing the costs and benefits. In Southeast Asia, large areas of tropical forests, such as the picture in letter A on the left, have been cleared for plantations of oil palm on the right, an important source of biodiesel. Although biodiesel offsets the use of fossil fuels, an oil palm plantation such as this stores only about 20% of the carbon that was stored in the tropical forest it replaced. Then we'll move on to the wind power. Sources and production, it's driven by the sun because kinetic energy from the wind is driven by the sun, and that sunlight can sometimes indicate wind patterns. And kinetic energy from wind is collected by wind turbines or windmills. Wind power is just over about 1% of global energy, but it's one of the fastest or the fastest growing renewable energy source at about 24% per year. And if you've ever driven to, 29 Palm Springs, you'll see all the windmills on the horizon. In the US, it accounts for about 3.5% of electricity production, and it's projected to double by right now in 2020. Across much of the western US, windmills such as this still pump water for livestock and irrigation, so wind power has been used for many, many years. Advantages and disadvantages of wind power: no fuel, no pollution, it's very economic, it's very domestic, carbon dioxide emission free, that's what the CO2e means. Disadvantages: it's still intermittent like solar energy. The aesthetics of it, it's not very aesthetically pleasing to look out at the mountains and see all the windmills, and sometimes they have been known to impact wildlife. Through a system of shafts and gears, the propellers of a wind turbine turn a generator to produce electricity, and that's what you can see in this picture. This is a wind farm in the California desert, probably the one that you see on your way to Vegas. It contains more than 4,000 separate wind turbine generators and provides enough electricity to power the city of Palm Springs, which is what you'll drive through, and all the surrounding communities. There is a lot of future development with wind power. The past 25 years, the cost of wind generation has gone down greatly. Some wind farms can produce at 3 cents per kilowatt hour, which is a great rate. Wind production is projected to grow rapidly, and it's, again, like they said, predictions that wind will provide 10% of global energy by 2020, and I'm interested to see if that is still the case. In the US, wind energy is most plentiful in the western mountains and the central plains, so you'll see a lot of these windmill farms in the central plains as well. So hydropower. Hydropower is the energy of water moving under the force of gravity. Sources and production, it's constantly supplied by the water cycle, or the hydrologic cycle. It's the most abundant renewable energy use because we have water everywhere. It's mainly used for electricity generation through impoundment, so dams will create a reservoir, which creates pressure behind that, and as water grows through the dam, that will generate electricity or turn a turbine. The run of the river is the portion of the river diverted through the powerhouse, and I'll show you a picture of what that looks like. Here's the water wheel that has been used for centuries by humans, and they have harnessed the kinetic energy of falling water to power machines that grind grains and saw wood. The impoundment hydroelectric plant is where water will be stored behind the wall of a dam that will accumulate potential energy as the water pressure builds up, and then the force of gravity carries water through a tunnel or a pipe known as a penstock, where it'll spin that turbine you see there, which the turbine blades will be attached to a generator, which will generate electricity. Here's a look at a run of river hydroelectric plant showing how water from a river will be diverted into pipes that flow to a power station, and there the force of the water spins a turbine attached to an electrical generator. These 10 countries account for about 75% of the world's hydropower production, and with the completion of the Three Gorges Dam facility, China is now the world's top producer and consumer of hydroelectric power. Advantages and disadvantages: fuel and pollution free, relatively inexpensive after you buy or pay for the initial dam construction. It also provides flood control and water storage in the reservoir that's created behind the dam, and It provides a continuous source of electricity. Disadvantages, you greatly disrupt the ecosystem. Do you remember the Hetch Hetchy Valley, what happened there? Loss of land and the initial cost. Here's a video about the largest dam in China that's being constructed, and I would encourage you to watch it because it's very, very interesting.